US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says there is enormous evidence that the coronavirus came from a research lab in Wuhan. Do you still believe the most likely source of COVID-19 is a wet market? Or is there, according to your advice, growing evidence it emanated from a lab? And will you urge the Americans, the Trump administration, to share their apparently compelling evidence with Australia or even globally through the United Nations Forum?
We work closely with the United States, and I've already made comments on this matter, and there's been no change to the Australian position on this. And which was to say that we can't rule out any of these arrangements. That's what I said the other day. But the most likely has been in a wildlife wet market, and that wildlife wet market is an important definition of what we're talking about here. There are wet markets and there are wildlife wet markets. They're two different types of things, and that is the most likely outcome. But what's really important is that we have a proper review, an independent review which looks into the sources of these things in a transparent way so we can learn the lessons to ensure that were there to be a virus of pandemic potential that would originate anywhere else in the world, we can learn the lessons from that. And that's what Australia is focused on. And I've written to all the G20 leaders to that end. Lani.
Josh Frydenberg said today at the Press Club that widespread closure of schools and childcare centres would have cost the economy $34 billion. What's your message to states that are still dragging their feet on reopening schools in a widespread way? And Mr Power, you've also said just now that there are some businesses that are ready to reopen. What proportion of businesses is that? Do you have a percentage on how many businesses are ready right now to reopen?
Well, on schools, I can only repeat what I've been saying for months, and that is that the expert medical advice is that schools can be fully open, and the expert economic advice that we've received from the Treasury is that not opening schools fully is costing jobs, and it does cost the economy. They're the facts. And those facts has led the Commonwealth Government to have a very consistent position on that and to welcome every day where there is a school with a classroom that is open, with more and more students attending and getting their learning face-to-face in the classroom. Ned, did you want to add?
Yeah, I think...
You'd probably need to go to a mic.
Need to go to a mic. It's a little hard to tell exactly how many in each category, but we've got a number of businesses that are working either at full capacity. For example, the mining, supermarkets, food processing industries, they've introduced COVID-safe practices and COVID-safe business models for their businesses and are continuing to operate right through. Other businesses have had some impact on demand, so they're running at partial capacity. A lot of in the housing construction area, for example, some have had to change their working practices to work around that. And there are businesses, particularly in hospitality and restaurants and pubs and tourism, that are still impacted by the restrictions that are there. And those are the businesses we're focusing on at the moment. There's a lot of small to medium sized businesses in there, and we're working with them now to make sure that they have all of the information they need to get their businesses back up and running.